Last year, I went on a hunting trip with my grandfather and 2 uncles. After a long day, we settled down by the campfire. As the fire crackled in the desolate night air, we told stories of our families. The one that really stuck out is the time he bought himself this Chevy Tahoe. It wasn't long before my grandmother took it to the store, and when she got it back, she told him, "Go buy yourself a truck, I like this one." So he did, and this became hers. This story made me laugh because it totally sounded like something she would say. But that's who she was, and she was one of the examples of what a strong woman can be. She ended up using that Tahoe for everything, including rescuing dogs, and even trained one for search and rescue and camped in the back. And when I was old enough, my grandfather started tossing me the keys to drive around their property. Officially, it's the first car I learned to drive on. Unfortunately, in 2019, she passed at way too young of an age. I had always imagined introducing her to my kids one day, but life doesn't always go our way. We were told to go find something of hers that would remind us of her, but I couldn't find anything at the time. I just wanted her back. But then last June, my grandfather decided it was time to part with a Tahoe, and I realized I had to go get it. I couldn't let that go to a stranger, and there's nothing that would remind me of her more than her truck. So, I packed a bag. So here was the plan. The Tahoe was in Oregon and 2 hours away from the nearest airport, so figured flying to California to visit family and then drive up to Oregon with my brother and mom. I've driven across the country many times, particularly I-80. This time I wanted to try a different, potentially more scenic route. So instead I wanted to set out early on Monday and hit Mount Hood for a hike around noon. Then boondock up in the Panhandle. Tuesday, drive to Yellowstone and explore for a couple hours and then stay in Buffalo, Wyoming. Wednesday, drive 4 hours and explore the Badlands and head straight across to Rochester, Minnesota. Thursday, come up towards Escanaba, Michigan and explore a little bit of the Upper Peninsula. Then crash in Mackinac City and come down to Detroit on Friday to be back by 11 a.m. I had to be there no later than 12 p.m. At first sight, the truck looked pretty good for 18 years old. The wheels looked like they had seen better days, one of the windows didn't work, and a mirror was cracked. But overall, not too bad. The interior was pretty much flawless. Apart from the indistinguishable dog smell, it was perfect. That smell is kind of nostalgic though. I think the last time I was sitting in this driver's seat was when I was maybe 14. My grandma had let me drive down their private dirt road, and this technically is the car that I learned to drive on. It's very weird sitting here knowing that I'm now the owner of this truck. But I was. The sun set, and I was heading out early the next morning. The first thing I did was start heading north blindly. I may have destroyed my phone screen on the ATV and can't use the GPS. I couldn't afford to buy a brand new phone at the next stop, so I was looking for a Best Buy to buy a refurbished one. But the closest one was in Eugene, 4 hours north. I stopped in Coos Bay to try and find a physical map. I checked a bunch of stores, gas stations, and the last guy didn't even know what I was asking for. I knew the basics of how to get there, so I headed north and then east toward I-5. Eventually I found I-5 and then Eugene, where I picked up a used iPhone XR for $300. It was old but was able to get me back up and running, but it took them an hour in Best Buy and 30 minutes in Coos Bay. I was behind. So I kept driving through Portland, around Mount Hood, and along the Columbia River. I made it to the trail I planned to camp on, but not before dark. I remember I was going up this muddy hill with streams of water rolling down, tree branches scratching both sides of the Tahoe I could barely see, but I kept pushing. Eventually I found a good spot to sleep. I knew I was on the edge of the mountain, but I did not expect to wake up to what I did. After soaking in that breathtaking view, it was time to head down the mountain. Apparently those views come with a price. The power steering pump appeared to be low, but I didn't see any leaks at first. So I risked it, got off the mountain, and pulled over at the next gas station. It looks like the cooler's the thing that's leaking. About another bottle of power steering fluid, and I'm just going to see how quickly it leaks, but hopefully I don't have to replace this in a parking lot. I made it down the mountain and through most of Montana without any noises or issues, but it wasn't long before. It seemed like nobody within 100 miles had the cooler I needed, and they told me it would be 5 days till they could get one. So what I ended up doing was cut the line at the cooler and bypass it altogether. I mean, it should be fine as long as it doesn't get too hot outside, and I wasn't towing anything. The Tahoe seemed happy now, but again, I lost a lot of time. I planned to be in Yellowstone by 1 or 2, but didn't pull into the area until 6 or 7. Instead of going in, I grabbed a bite to eat and booked a room on the east side, and planned to see Yellowstone in the morning. I was going to need to make up some time. So it's 3 hours to the place I want to be in Yellowstone, and that's quite a bit farther than I had planned. And I forgot my camera charger and batteries at the hotel. And it's 8 miles to the next exit, so looks like another 40 minutes behind. Little concerned for time, but I mean, I'll make it. I had heard so many great things about Yellowstone, and this was my must-visit destination for this journey. The problem was, it was summer at one of the most visited national parks. I felt like I was waiting in line at Disneyland. I waited in traffic behind RVs, minivans, and eventually buffalo for well over an hour. Not my idea of getting out and seeing nature. But when I got through, I got to see some of the most amazing natural wonders, and I could see why people flocked from around the world to see it. Yellowstone had to be one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Even though I was there for 6 hours, I didn't even feel like I scraped the surface. I really need to go back there one day and spend more than just a few hours there. It was 4 o'clock on Wednesday now, and it was really starting to set in how far behind I was. It was time to stop sightseeing and put the pedal to the floor. But of course...
Where are you coming from and where are you going to?
Oregon and going to Detroit. After that mishap, I only made it slightly past the place I planned to stay the night before. Tomorrow and Friday were gonna be rough, and I was only halfway there. It was 20 hours from Detroit on Thursday morning, and I knew I needed to get miles behind me. But as I was passing the Badlands, realized this is what I wanted to do on this trip, and the rest of this drive was already gonna suck, so I went in. I didn't spend long inside, but enough time to appreciate it and go for a hike. My farmer's tan is getting really bad. I've got SPF 50 on now, but the best that it can do is just try and even it out. In my mind, beautiful scenery usually involves trees, mountains, greenery, water, but not barren deserts. But the Badlands were beautiful in their own way, and I'm glad I got to experience such a diversity and beauty across the country. It was time to move now. I removed the Upper Peninsula from the itinerary and rerouted down through Chicago, which would save several hours. I currently have 13 and a half hours of driving left and it's 5 p.m. Getting there by 12 tomorrow probably just means I'm not going to sleep that much, but oh well. At this point, I can consider the trip over. I ended up driving the rest of the way through the night for a total of 20 hours, making sure that if I got too tired to pull over. And I got in at 7 a.m. with 5 hours to spare. Although challenges kept coming, they were manageable. And they are what made the trip interesting. It's always a much better story when there's a little drama. I got to see some amazing places. Over the next couple years, I want to fix up this Tahoe and then start prepping it for off-roading so I can take it on many more adventures. And I know my grandmother will be there with me every step of the way.
There's a winding road ahead of me. I can't